All right, gang, just to warn you, you're going to want to have the pause button handy for this little lecture. I've put it so there's about 20 seconds per slide to make things just a little bit easier for you and me and load times. Today's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. I'm mainly going to talk to you about other jobs in the theater, like scene, lighting, and costume design, but also a little bit about some things that I didn't get to simply because of the nature of the quarantine and everything. Stuff about producers, and a little bit of clarification on what it is a director does. So let's start off with one of the more important positions in the theater, and that of a producer. On the college campus, basically the chair of any department is a producer, and their job is to hire people for the artistic staff as well as the front of house staff. Usually they have a degree in arts business, and they have to come up with money. Their main job is to maintain the integrity of the mission statement. And a mission statement is a theater's statement of purpose, intent, the type of shows they do, the target audience. Make sure you write down that definition for later. But that's mainly what a producer does. So we're going to take a look at the jobs of designers, in this case scenic, lighting, and costume. Not that those are more important than the others, but the basic idea with designers is you must collaborate or die. You all got to get along pretty well. And that collaboration starts off first with the director, right? And we've talked about what a director does. By the way, if I've had to define what a director does, if I haven't done that already, a director interprets the play and creates a vision. They're basically the coach of the team, and they're the one that basically helps decide what happens and what doesn't happen. But the person who is the most important person in the theater is the stage manager. They run rehearsals, they do everything pretty much, and if I had to define what it was or what it is, a stage manager is basically, a stage manager is God. They are tiny little gods, and it is the most stressful job in the theater, but it is the most important. So yes, there are other jobs in the theater, obviously, but let's look at three specifically. So let's start with the scenic designer. The scenic designer designs and builds, most oftentimes, the set. And so they have to have an idea of architecture, interior design, design history, and they must come up with a design metaphor. That is a statement, a visual statement that expresses the totality of the show. For example, if you're going to do Les Miserables, you have to have a barricade, right? And this is a community theater production of Les Miserables, and as you can see, it's not a bad job for a barricade. That ladder there is a little bit out of place, but it still works. In the musical Little Women, there's a moment where they have to fly a kite on stage, and you have to figure out how to do that. Now, if we were doing it in Hainline Theater, it wouldn't be a problem. You just attach some fish line. But if we were doing it in Horrobin, it would be a little bit more difficult. And that's the type of things that a scenic designer has to figure out. So with Becca's permission, your TA, I have been given permission to talk about costume design. And yes, costume designers design and build the costume, but they also will tailor or sew the costumes. They'll do research, they'll measure actors, they'll plot a quick change, which is a fast costume change that an actor might have to do on stage. They're fun to choreograph, actually. Consider Hamlet for a second. Now, we all pretty much know Hamlet. If you haven't read it, you pretty much know the character. He's someone who is almost always dressed in black because he's suffering. So here we have a Hamlet in scrubs, kind of, sort of. But the costume designer might decide to take a more typical approach to Hamlet. And so in this case, we have a Hamlet with very wide collar and a cape. I don't know if it works, but, you know, capes are fun. You can do flourishes with them. But if the costume designer decided to have a more modern look of a Hamlet, well then there you go. We have David Tennant in a parka, and we've abandoned the traditional black and gone with a much more vibrant red. Weird story, that skull right there is actually the skull of a 18th century composer. It's a real skull, pretty cool. Lighting designers, their job is to, well, light the stage, but it's not quite that easy because they also have to have an understanding of electricity and optics and light hang and focus. And when I was in college, light hang and focus was always the job I signed up for because it's a lot of fun. For example, A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol has a lot of special effects in it that are required by a good lighting designer, basically. There's the moment where Marley appears in the doorknob, and you have to figure out how to do that. And then, of course, there are all these ghosts that appear in A Christmas Carol. So there's a lot of fog and light. A fog and light machine is known as a hazer. And if you've ever been to a haunted house, you've probably smelled the fog juice that appears when you're there. And that is a lighting designer's job, is to figure out how best to focus the light. Now, if you'll notice in this picture, you'll notice that there's still darkness, but the light that appears around Scrooge is very bright and vivid. And then the light that appears around the ghost, Marley, is very ghostly, for lack of a better word. Cool! And if you remember, I started this class by talking about the 4 E's of any artistic endeavor, and I always end with what I call the new E's, 4 new E's and an H. All right, evolves, entrances, essential, and empathy. So yeah, art evolves. Through this quarantine, I've talked with a lot of theaters about how they're going to reopen, and a lot of them are talking about extended runs of their shows, but limiting the amount of people they can have get into the theater. We're talking about how we're going to do that next year or next fall. So yeah, we'll see through this quarantine. But yeah, art also entrances and fills you with a sense of wonder and reminds you of what it feels like to believe in, dare I say it, magic. Yeah, if you've ever been to Walt Disney World or any of the Disney theme parks, you walk in with that sense of wonder. And yes, art is essential. Without it, we would go crazy. Especially now in this quarantine, we find ourselves relying on our art to help distract us from this very bizarre reality that we find ourselves in. And my Facebook flashback reminded me that a year ago I saw Avengers Endgame at 3 a.m. in the morning in Peoria in IMAX with a room full of like-minded people. And we all experienced empathy at the same time when Tony Stark did that snap. Sorry, spoilers. But yeah, those are the new 4 E's, and I'll throw another one at you, which isn't an E but an H, hope. Art leaves us with a sense of hope. And goodness knows we could use a sense of hope in these trying times. And that's it. Let's talk business, though, just so everyone's on the same page. Your final will post to your inbox on Monday. If I can get it to you maybe a little bit earlier, I will. It'll be in your inbox on Monday, and then you have the entire week to get it back to me. But please keep in mind, I cannot accept anything after Friday, May 8th. That is the last day of the semester, and I have to post grades like 2 days after that. So I'll be in lockdown trying to figure all of that stuff out. But again, your final will come to you on Monday, and the stuff that'll be over will be all the COVID lectures, so anything that I YouTubed at you. Please keep in mind that if you have a grade appeal to, if you're going to email me over the summer, just know that tact works better. All right, that's an actual email that's sent over to me 26 times about someone complaining a grade. And please keep in mind also that they are considering the pass-fail option now. So if you get a grade that you don't think you deserved, you do have the right now to, instead of the usual grade scale, have it be pass-fail. But I would say try to work with your professor before that happens. And if you have a question about grades, please feel free to email me about them after they are posted. But please know this, and that is I am working towards your favor, so just make sure that you have everything turned in. and you should get a grade that not only have you earned, but also that you deserve during these strange times. Guys, it's been great being your teacher, even though it's been online. I'm sorry things have worked out the way that they have, but these are the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and it's just better to just sort of yes and those experiences. So if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. I will be attentive to my email over the weekend. Otherwise, don't do anything stupid, but if you do, don't get caught. Meow, man.